What's going on, you guys? My name is Zach Hartley, and in this video, we're going to break down everything you need to know about margin accounts. I'm going to talk about what the different terms mean and how you can better use a margin account to produce a better ROI for yourself. Here is everything you need to know. Let's go. Okay, so let's just start real quick with what is margin. Margin allows you to borrow money from your broker. So if you use Questrade or Thinkorswim or Interactive Brokers, if you have a margin account, it means that you can borrow money from that broker. But when you borrow that money, you will have to know that you do pay a small interest rate on it, usually between 2 and 7% annually. And borrowing on margin is what increases your leverage. Leverage refers to how much money you are trading with compared to how much money you actually have in the marketplace. Now, if you're interested in finding a new day trading brokerage, I highly recommend Questrade. That is the platform that I use every single day. I think they're the best in Canada, and they have a promotion on right now where if you use the link in the description below, they will give you $50 in free commissions to get started. So there's absolutely no risk to get started. Now, to figure out how much money you can borrow once you have a margin account set up, you have to look at the margin requirement for each security that you hold. So right now, I pulled up a level 1 quote from Apple Inc. The price is $129 right now. And on the right hand side here, you can see the long MR and the short MR. That stands for the margin requirement if you're going to buy or if you're going to short sell. Now, this says that right now, Apple has a long MR of 30%. And that means that if you invest $10,000 into Apple today, right now, it means that Questrade is then going to extend you $7,000 worth of margin that you can then use to extend your buying power. And so what margin allows you to do is when you put money into a security, if it has a lower margin requirement like 30% like this, it means that Questrade will give you more money that you can borrow to buy more and more positions. Now, you can figure out how much money you have to spend by looking at these two lines right here. This is your maintenance excess and your buying power. The maintenance excess refers to the amount of available equity in your account that you can borrow against. So this represents how much equity in your account has not been margined against yet and how much money you still have there as basically a buffer. Now, when you go down a notch and you go to the buying power, this represents the maximum amount you could borrow from Questrade, assuming the security has a 30% margin requirement. Now, any of the very large cap companies or any of the ETFs will have a 30% margin requirement. However, if you're trading penny stocks or you're trading psychedelic stocks or drone companies, they're probably going to have a 50, 80, or even 100% margin requirement, meaning that if you invest into those companies, Questrade is not going to extend you any margin. So you have to keep that in mind and make sure that if you're looking to do this on margin, make sure you understand the margin requirement of the securities that you are going to be holding. Now, to calculate your buying power, Questrade assumes a 30% margin requirement, which means all you have to do is multiply your maintenance excess by 3.33. As you can see, these numbers pretty much align, and so do these ones. And so what this is saying is that you have X amount of equity left in your account that is not being margined against. If you buy securities with a 30% margin requirement, you could buy up to, in this case, $5,600 worth of that security. That's how you read and understand this chart. Okay, so let's just start with an example. You deposit $10,000 cash to your new margin account. You have not made a trade yet. Your cash equals $10,000. Your market value is $0 because you have not invested anything. Therefore, your maintenance excess is equal to your cash at $10,000. You have $10,000 worth of securities, meaning you can leverage up to $10,000, and that's your maintenance excess. Your buying power in this case would probably be like $33,000 or whatever. Now, the next step here is that with your $10,000 deposit from earlier, you go out and buy $20,000 worth of stock ABC that has a margin requirement of 30%. Your cash balance is now negative $10,000, and the market value of your investment equals $20,000 because you just bought it today. Therefore, your total equity after you do the 20 minus 10 is still $10,000 because you just made those transactions today. The margin requirement for that stock is 30%, and you bought $20,000 worth of it. Therefore, the margin requirement is $6,000. When we subtract the margin requirement from your equity, your maintenance excess is now $4,000. So you invested $10,000 and you put $10,000 into your account. You bought $20,000 worth of Apple stock, which means you have now a margin requirement of $6,000. You have to maintain 30% of the security value. So 30% of that $20,000, you have to maintain that in your account and have that money ready to go. Now let's keep going, and we continue from the earlier scenario, and your $20,000 investment unexpectedly declines in value by 10% to $18,000. Your cash balance is still negative $10,000, but now your total equity is only $8,000. Your margin requirement equals $18,000 times 30% equals $5,400. And so your equity, your percentage of what was owned in stock ABC declined by 10%, but because you were leveraged, your equity actually declined by 20% because your equity gets taken out first before the broker does. So if the stock goes down by 20%, your holding actually drops by 40%. If it goes down by 10%, your holding drops by 20%. That's exactly what just happened here. And so your total equity dropped from $10,000 to $8,000 on a 10% drop in the security. Your margin requirement is 30% of $18,000, which equals $5,400, but you only own $8,000 worth of securities yourself at the moment. Therefore, your maintenance excess at this point would be reflected as that difference of $2,600. Now, with some bad news on your earnings, your $18,000 investment from earlier actually declines in value by another 25% to $13,500. Now remember, you borrow $10,000 from Questrade or from whatever your broker is, and so unfortunately that means that your equity is now only worth $3,500. You started with $10,000 and your equity, your portion of it, is now only worth $3,500. However, 30% of $13,500 is $4,050, which means your equity portion no longer meets the margin requirements. Therefore, your maintenance excess is now negative $550, and you are in a margin call, and you need to deposit funds or sell shares to bring this value up to a positive amount. So in summary, what happened here is that you had $10,000, you saw that you could borrow some money from Questrade, so you borrowed $10,000 and you bought into a security. You bought $20,000 worth of that security. That security had a 30% margin requirement on it, which means you need to hold at least 30% of that security in your initial $10,000 at all times. Unfortunately, because the stock declined so much, it meant that you no longer met that margin requirement because your initial $10,000 actually dwindled down so much because you used margin. You had twice the risk and twice the reward. Unfortunately, twice the risk meant that you no longer met the margin requirement, and therefore you got put into a margin call. And this is what that margin call looks like. So I got an email back in November of last year from Questrade for an $86 margin call. So not a big deal at all. I think I just sold one position and we were all good here. So not a big concern for me at all. But I do want to point out for you that if you get a margin call, you're going to get an email at like 6:55 in the morning. It's going to absolutely ruin your day if it's a big call and you have to fund this or you have to sell some positions and sell at a loss. It's a big deal. You need to take this as a priority because it's a big thing here. Luckily, mine was only $86, so not a big deal at all, but I'm just telling you right now, this is exactly what it looks like. If you wait a couple hours, they'll probably give you a call, and if you don't respond to them, they will just sell your position. So you need to do something. You need to either add funds, you need to choose what positions to sell, or Questrade will choose what positions to sell for you. Now, margin calls happen when your maintenance excess goes negative. So when you no longer have any equity that you can borrow money against, and that number goes negative, it means that you no longer meet the margin requirements for your current holding positions, and it means that you probably owe Questrade a little bit of money, or you need to get back into good standing with those margin requirements by liquidating some positions and holding a little bit more cash. You do need to make this a priority if it happens, because this is important, because you want to be able to control what positions Questrade will sell out. You don't want to have to sell out the stocks that are at really, really high valuations and maybe you've done really well on them, because if your broker sells the ones that have very high returns on them, it could also trigger some tax implications that you weren't expecting. Now, here are my tips for using margin. Number one rule that you need to follow is that you should never use all of your margin. If you go out and use all of your margin and that stock drops by 1%, you are automatically going to be in a margin call the next day. So you need to be very, very careful about how much margin you use. You need to make sure that you monitor your maintenance excess, because as long as that is positive, that shows you how much much margin you have left to use before it gets to zero and you get a margin call. So that's what you want to avoid. You also need to make sure that you understand the risk. A lot of the times when you use margin, you're multiplying the risk and reward. And so if you drop by 5% and you did the scenario that we talked about today, your position, your cash balance actually took a 10% drop. So you need to be very well aware of that. And you also need to know that no matter what broker you use, whether it's Thinkorswim, whether it's Questrade, no matter who you use, your broker will not hesitate to sell your positions no matter what it is. And you have to deal with the tax implications no matter what position they sell. So make sure that you take control of the situation if you ever get a margin call. Now, if you're interested in learning more about this or learning more about how to find an entry and exit point or use margin more efficiently, then you should definitely consider signing up for my stock market fundamentals course. It is completely free and it is hosted on Skillshare. It's over 9 hours long and you can cancel at any time, but you get 2 weeks free. So if you can do the 9-hour course in under 2 weeks, cancel it, you get the entire thing for free. It's hosted on Skillshare. There's over 4,000 students that have gone through the course. There's 225 reviews, and 82% of people that go through the course say it exceeded their expectations. I promise it'll be the best free resource that you can find online. The link is in the description down below. And in summary, you need to be very careful when you use margin. You need to start with a practice account, and you should not risk any money that you cannot afford to lose. And if you get any value out of this video, remember to click that like and subscribe button. I sincerely appreciate it. We'll see you in the next one. Good luck trading. Good luck investing. Talk to you soon.